The next alternative control flow structure we're going to look at is the do-while loop. As I said in the last lesson, the do-while loop is interesting because the test or the relational expression is placed at the bottom of the loop rather than at the top. Here's how the syntax of the do loop works. You have the keyword do, and you open up your body, then you have your set of statements, however many that is, whatever it involves, then you close the body, and then you have the keyword while followed by a relational expression. Let's close that out. So as you see, the main difference between a while loop and a do-while loop is that the execution of the program will enter the loop regardless of the value of the relational expression because it's not tested until after the set of statements is executed for the first time. Now for lots of situations that doesn't matter. In fact, I'll demonstrate here in this first lesson how a while loop and a do-while loop can be pretty much exactly the same loop. But there are situations where a do-while loop is preferable to a while loop, and we'll look at a couple of those situations in the next lesson. So let's get started with an example. So first let's write a simple while loop to do something like sum the first 10 integers. So we need a variable for number, we need a variable for the sum, and then we're going to say while number is less than or equal to 10, sum plus equal number plus plus number, close out the loop, write out the result, and there we go. Let's add a console read key, and now let's run the program. Total is 55. So let's write that now using a do while. Set our variables back to their initial values, and then do sum plus equal number plus plus number, close the body, while number is less than or equal to 10. And let's steal this console write line. And now let's run the program. Exact same result. So as you can tell, in this particular case, the while and the do while are absolutely equivalent. The only difference is that the test is at the bottom. Now, what would happen if for some reason the value of number going into the loop made the relational expression false? We talked about this in the lesson on while loops. Well, of course, if that was the case, then the loop would never be executed. So for example, if we set number to 11, run the program, the total is 0 in that case, because we never got into this part of the loop, into the body. Now, let's do the same thing in our second example with the do while loop and watch what happens. So why was the total 11? Well, the total was 11 because we actually did go into the loop, added 11 to sum. Sum is 0, so now sum is 11. Then incremented number by 1 to 12. Then went to the test and saw that 12 is not less than or equal to 10. It's greater than. So we dropped out of the loop and printed the sum of 11. So that's the downside to using a do while loop for a problem like this. If the loop control variable's value is going to make the expression false at the beginning, the do while loop isn't going to pick it up until after the first iteration of the loop. So you have to be very careful when you're using a do while loop in this way. But at least here you've seen the basics of how a do while loop works. And if the conditions are correct, the preconditions, all the variables are set to the right values, then for a problem like this, a while loop and a do while loop are absolutely equivalent in how they produce output. So now let's move to the next lesson where we're going to look at situations where the do while loop is actually preferable to the while loop. Generally speaking, while loops and do while loops are equivalent. Sometimes you might prefer a do while loop over a while loop. And let me show you an example where you might prefer it. It's not necessary, but you might prefer it. So we're going to write a little program that adds a sum of numbers until the user says to stop. So we're going to create two integer variables, sum and number, and we're going to create a string variable more, which we're going to set to yes. So we're going to say while more is equal to yes, console write, enter a number, number equals, convert to int 32, console read line, sum plus equal number, console write, more yn for yes or no, and then more equals console read line. Close off the loop. Let's check out our error right here. And then we'll have a console write line. The sum is, and then sum. Run the program. Enter number 1, more yes. Enter number 2, more yes. Enter number 3, more no. The sum is 6. So now let's see how to write that with a do while loop and see that it's just a little bit better. Int sum number, string more. Notice I don't have to initialize it here. Sum equals 0. Do. Console write. Enter a number. Number equals convert to int 32. Console read line. Sum plus equal number. Console write more. Yes, no. Question mark, space. And then more equals console read line. While more is equal to yes. And then console write line. The sum is sum. All right, so now we're ready to check to see if it works. 1, 2, 3. This version is just a slight bit shorter than the other version and perhaps a little bit easier to read. You also don't have to initialize more to a value. You can assign it inside the loop initially because more is not going to be read until the end of the loop. But again, there's really not that much difference between the while loop version and the do while version. So you're not going to be in any trouble or be looked upon any less as a programmer for choosing one or the other of these. In fact, because everybody understands the while loop, you might be questioned a little more choosing the do while. But again, you shouldn't be because they are equivalent. So that finishes our discussion of the do while loop, and now we're ready to move to the next lesson where we're going to begin discussing the third and final control flow construct in this chapter, and that's the for each loop.